You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and a special welcome to our annual Solstice Show. As usual, though I know this may sound like a three people walked into a bar joke, but as usual, our guests include a Christian feminist and a Jewish feminist in recognition of Christmas and Hanukkah, and an atheist feminist for good measure and for the secular solstice itself. Ramadan, the great Muslim festival, moves around the calendar, as do the big Buddhist and Hindu holidays. As usual, my guests are unusual, shakers of the status quo, dedicated to social justice, to women's empowerment, and acting on their beliefs for the betterment of humanity and the planet. Sort of a metaphysical applied action in the real world. And then we close with my essay, Four Secular Saints, back by popular demand. But first we need to look inside the headlines. There are two items inside the headlines this week. The first you will never have heard of because it didn't even make the news. Suad al-Shamari has been jailed. Suad, that's spelled S-O-U-A-D, al-A-L, Shamari, S-H-A-M-M-A-R-Y. And please get a pencil because I'm going to ask you to write something. Suad al-Shamari is a liberal activist in Saudi Arabia, the first female lawyer to present a case in court, a strong supporter of women's driving rights and general human rights, and a critic of the government, asking them to take a stronger stand against Islamist terrorism. She co-founded the Saudi Liberal Network, an organization that stands up for progressive causes in the kingdom, itself a brave thing to do. From the start, when she fought for custody of her daughter, she has been a target of militants and conservative religious leaders. Then she was arrested in October and charged with calling publicly for the liberation of Saudi women and separating religion from government and ridiculing religious texts. No court date has been set, but she is still in prison since October. She faces a possible sentence of up to 10 years and 1,000 lashes, which amounts to being killed, and a $260,000 fine. We need letters, we need signatures on a petition at change.org. If you go to change.org, you will see a Help Free My Mother, Suad al-Shamari petition. Again, it's SOUADALSHAMMARY. And we need emails to go to http:// www.moda, M like Mary, O-D like do make a revolution, A, moda, moda.gov.sa, the Saudi government, www.moda.gov.sa, saying that this is a peaceful activist they have imprisoned and that the world is watching to set her free. The other item inside the headlines is shorter and simpler. I just want to go on record as saying that the two men who led the torture initiative, James Mitchell and Bruce Jessen, both commented in different ways that the program was sissified before they got involved, telling us a lot about them and a lot about demon lover politics. But also I want to say that even amidst and awash of the euphemisms of language, this is surely Dianne Feinstein's finest hour. I have not always agreed with her and not always been a fan of her, but she has seen this through and made it public at great cost. Now for our first guest. Sister Simone Campbell has served as executive director of Network since 2004. She is a religious leader, an attorney, and a poet with a lot of experience in public policy and in advocacy for systemic change. During the 2010 congressional debate about health care reform, she wrote the famous Nuns Letter supporting the bill. And in 2012, she was instrumental in organizing the Nuns on the Bus tour of 9 states to oppose the Ryan budget. And she's leading a new cross-country Nuns on the Bus trip focused on voting and comprehensive immigration reform. She just doesn't stop. Sister Simone Campbell. Sister Simone, welcome to the program.
Oh, great to be with you.
You are representing all of Christianity, and I cannot think of a better, warmer, and more visionary representative than you. You've been in a lot of trouble with the Vatican. Many times it seems to be a comfortable place for you. Tell us about the recent Nuns on the Bus. I know that just recently you had another round of it.
Yes, we did. We were out actually for 6 weeks. 6 weeks is too long to have a bus trip, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But what we were doing was traveling. We traveled to 11 states, working on voter turnout. What we know is that so many people in our nation feel so pushed out, so economically stressed, so challenged that they have disengaged from our electoral process.
Yes.
And we were out trying to talk to them and help folks understand that we're in this together. It's hard work, this democracy, and we cannot let big money scare us away.
Yeah.
But we found it was even a bigger struggle than we even thought when we planned the trip, because so many places we met people who just say, they don't care.
What's
it doesn't
the point?
matter.
What's the point?
What's the point? Exactly.
Which is it's exactly what folks like the Koch brothers want them to think, isn't it?
Exactly. And that's the part that's so chilling, is that we, the people, are going to lose our democracy if we don't stand up. While we were on the bus, I studied a bit about what happened in Athens, the original democracy, in about 600 BC. And they had, from 600 to 400 BC, about 200 years, they had a very thriving democracy. Then after about 200 years, then the wealthy started fighting with each other and trying to get more for their particular family. Yeah. And that undermined their democracy and left them open to being taken over. By then, it was the Macedonians. But if you really look at what's happening in our nation, I am quite concerned. We've had a thriving democracy for about 200 years.
Yep.
It's been in decline recently, and now we have the big, wealthy families fighting. Yep. And that drives out us ordinary people, because their concern is about themselves, not about the rest of the nation.
That's right.
The wealthy's concern is about the rest, not as about themselves. And so I'm really concerned about the future of our democracy, and that we, the people, have got to stand up against this. Well, it's tough going, though.
It is very tough going, but the way you go at it is very impressive, because it's unexpected and it's refreshing, and it's exactly what the other side wants. I think it's quite conscious, because they do it in every aspect. They do it with money. They do it with voter suppression. They know that when the people turn out, they don't stand a chance. The people win. And sometimes I've thought, many democracies have mandatory voting, and if you don't vote, you pay a small fine, $10 or something. But and you can write in, and that contemporary Greece and a lot of the Commonwealth countries, certainly Australia and New Zealand, have something like a 90% turnout. But they have compulsory voting. It's just it's assumed. And when people say to me, "But that sounds fascist," and I say, "Is compulsory education for children fascist? We have that,
Good point. Good point.
So we've got to do something. But let me move on, because I have access to your wonderful brain. So many things to ask you. For one thing. Let's talk for a minute about Francis, who is very beguiling and fetching and moving as Pope, but who seems to be two questions. One, is it all cosmetic, and or is he actually moving toward substantive change, in your opinion? And two, there seems to be movement on certainly liberation church issues, on poverty, on all those right things, and even on gay rights, but women don't seem to be mentioned. And whenever women are get raised, whether it's nuns on the bus, or whether it's women as priests, or divorce, or reproductive rights. It seems to be the same old, same old. Tell us your thoughts on that.
Well, I think what's happening is that Pope Francis is trying to open up dialogue in our church, much more than trying to change specific definitions. And in order to do that, then he's saying that there's room for everyone in the conversation. Last year in the November, a year ago, in the exhortation that he issued, he had 4 steps for peace building. And what I think he's trying to do is build some peace within the church, so we're just not always name-calling and pointing fingers at each other, and really trying to bring people together. Those 4 points are key. What he says is you cannot protect your turf and build peace. You must enter into a process of dialogue, which is what he's encouraging. The second is unity prevails over conflict. Eventually, we do get tired of fighting. And what he's trying to do is to bring people to our better selves where we want to be united. Mm-hmm. The third is realities, and he uses the plural, realities are more important than ideas. And this is where I think the issue of women and folks who are left out of our economy really come to the front, because it's the stories of women and the stories of real people who struggle every day should be at the heart of peace building. Yes. And what this means is that he is giving us a place to lift up our story and to let people know who we are, and in the process, that by definition creates a bigger space for all of us. It's that work that I think he's engaged in without changing the definitions. And he does come from Argentina, which is a bit of a macho culture, so and we shouldn't be totally surprised by that, but he is used to dealing with women who can exercise power. I mean, they have a woman president, and he had some really sparking relationships with her in terms of some fights they had, he's not afraid of engaging women, which is a big change. And I think what he's trying to do, though, is to really call us to make room for everybody and have our story as a piece of the whole. That's a dramatic change. It won't change the definitions yet.
And you are sanguine that he will, if that is true, and I hope, oh boy, wow, do I hope you're right. You are sanguine about him being able to penetrate the entrenched establishment?
Well, he's done an amazing job so far.
Yeah, he has.
We were quite concerned, actually, about his health and being taken care of, and that there are those who would like to do him in, but I think it's very smart that he's living in the hostel, the pension that they have there at the Vatican, and he eats in the cafeteria. So we don't have to worry about him getting poisoned the way some of the Borgias got poisoned. So I think he's okay.
I was thinking that exact same thing, but I didn't think I dared say it to you. I thought, very, very clever. I mean, he's not eating what they usually feed him, because otherwise he'll wind up like in Godfather 3. And so, and so to hear you say it, yeah, that was a very smart move. Has there been any peep from him about nuns on the bus?
No. The only thing is that I sent him a copy of my book, A Nun on the Bus, and I did just about a week ago got a letter back from a Monsignor saying thank you very much. The Holy Father was grateful for the book, so I know he got it. So that's pretty sweet. That's pretty sweet. The thing is Nuns on the Bus is really about the political application of our faith to politics and everyday life. It's done in the shadow and the notoriety of the Vatican. I like to say the Vatican started it. But they'll probably say I started it. But the fact is that what we are doing with the bus is just lifting up our faith in the public square, and the consequence of faith is that we must stand up for our struggling people, and that's what we do on the bus. So it's perfectly in keeping with our faith.
Well, you're living your faith.
Well, we're trying to. That's for sure. It's always a challenge, but the folks we meet on the bus are just amazing. I've met so many folks that just touch me so deeply. Can I just tell you quickly a story of one young woman
please do.
in New Orleans, Caprice, who as a seventh grader, was left with her to take care of her grandmother during Hurricane Katrina. She was left in their apartment house on a second floor apartment, and then the dikes broke and the levees broke, and then they got flooded. She had to get her grandmother up on the roof of their 3-story apartment building, and she painted the sign saying, "Help, come rescue us." She then found another woman in their apartment building, an older woman. She got her up on the roof, a seventh grader, then helps the women get rescued by helicopter, gets to they get helicoptered to the Superdome, and then she told me, "You don't want to know what happened there. It was worse than what could ever happen to a dog." And then she makes it all through high school. She continues on. She's obviously a super responsible young person. Yeah. And then she had just a breakdown, the trauma finally got to her. Sure. And she was hiding out in her apartment, in her family's apartment, just terrified of the world. And finally got connected to this amazing program, Cafe Reconcile, which has now gotten her back to herself, where she has processed the trauma, is engaged in the world again, smiles, and she said she's stepping back into her life, and she's learning the restaurant trade. And when we saw her was about to graduate, it was such a story of hope and resilience.
Yes.
And it's the determination of responsible folks to make a difference in our society. Those are the folks we try to nourish on the bus and to lift up and say, every day I am just so impressed by their determination and their commitment. It's wonderful.
And their bravery. Well, I am also impressed by yours. And when I'll be really happy? I will be really happy when there is Pope Simone. I'm sorry. I know that's not, de rigueur or whatever, but I think that would mean the most amazing church, the most transformed institution, and it would be not only brilliant and visionary and compassionate and true to its mission, but it would be really cool. Just like you are. Thank you so much for everything that you do, Simone, and for being with us on Women's Media Center Live. And a joyous solstice season to you.
And to you, Robin. Thank you so much.
We need to take a short break here. This is Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll return in just a moment with Laurie Gaylor from and now for something completely different, Freedom from Religion Foundation.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. Regular listeners will know that in previous years on our Solstice show, we also always hear from the secular community, from our friends at Freedom from Religion Foundation. If you've ever wondered who is it that lodges those courageous challenges and lawsuits when somewhere the religious right wants to put up on federal grounds a statue of the Ten Commandments, or when they force children to pray in school, which they have no right to force, or the like, it's Freedom from Religion Foundation. And here is its founder and a strong feminist, back on the program, a repeated guest, Laurie Gaylor. Laurie, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much, and Merry Winter Solstice.
Yeah, Merry Winter Solstice to you, too. Well, Freedom from Religion Foundation, which is the largest free thought association in America, continues to do excellent work for the Constitution and keeping religion out of the public square as the founders wanted. Tell us about what's been going on with FFRF in the past year. I know you've had court cases and exciting stuff happen.
We have been very busy growing. We have 21,500 members now and need more staff, and have outgrown our 1855 building in downtown Madison, Wisconsin. So we've been adding a 4-story addition, and we'll be moving in at the end of the year.
Congratulations.
Hopefully making us much more productive, even more productive than we are already. and we have 5 staff attorneys, and we have what I call a sister fellow, who is a recent law school grad who is being sent by her law school to work for us at no cost to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so these 6 attorneys work to end violations without our having to go to court.
Aha.
But we have we're about 10 or 11 lawsuits right now going on, and they're across the gamut, from suing over schools that have 10 Commandments monuments in front of them,
Ugh.
which we should not have had to do, and that's in Pennsylvania, to going after the IRS preferential treatment of religion.
Wow. Very, very busy docket.
Well, we have a lot of non-judicial victories, where, hundreds of them a year, where we end many violations. In Florida, we settled with a school district that was allowing Bibles to be so-called passively distributed in high schools in the Orlando area.
How do you passively distribute something?
Well, it's so ridiculous. They let them set up a big table. And then they said that the people aren't supposed to talk to the students, but they were proselytizing them. So we went in and said, we want to hand out all this other literature critical of the Bible. And most of ours was censored. And so the school district agreed this year to let us distribute in January. And now the Satanic Temple is asked to distribute, and it looks like they're going to end their forum of passive distribution by outsiders, and that's what we wanted to do.
I see. By the way, while we're on distributing literature, this is a moment that I can take to say that Annie Laurie is the compiler and editor of a truly wonderful book called Women Without Superstition, No Gods, No Masters, the collected writings of women freethinkers of the 19th and 20th centuries. This is Mary Wollstonecraft and Elizabeth Cady Stanton and a whole lot of other incredibly wonderful women that you've never heard of. But the premise of the book, which is quite accurate historically, is that the suffragists and all of these women social justice advocates were almost always freethinkers, agnostics, atheists, critical of religion. It seems to go hand in hand with criticizing patriarchy.
Well, I think the earliest, our foremothers almost had to be unorthodox.
That's right.
Because they were fighting the biblical injunction, woman be in silence.
That's right.
Protection.
And we see
it. You can learn only from your husband.
That's right. And we see it coming back at us today in terms of fundamentalism, whether it's Christian fundamentalism or Jewish or Islamic. It's the same patriarchal message. Anyway, this is a wonderful book, Women Without Superstition. It's available on the website of Freedom from Religion Foundation, which is ffrf.org. That's simple. And by the way, it's a wonderful website with funny, witty things on it, like Heathen's Greetings and T-shirts that say, beware of dogma and keep Saturn in Saturnalia. And so I urge you to visit it, and not only for the hardcore information on keeping a firewall between religion and the public sphere, as the framers wanted, but also for its wit and for good books. Go on, Annie Laurie. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, thank you. And anybody who wants a sample of our newspaper, Free Thought Today, can just click a button at our website and ask for it, and we'd be glad to send a copy. And we believe in transparency, and we really report what we do with members' dues, and it's a lot. And I also wanted to say that there's a great omission in this anthology, Women Without Superstition, which is you, Robin.
Oh.
And I didn't know, I knew of you, but of course I should have realized you were a freethinker. But so I'm sorry about that, and I'm going to have to remedy that with an anthology of women freethinkers of the 21st century.
Oh, thank you. That's really quite lovely. The combination of freethinking and feminism seems organic to me, and you and your mother have been amazing feminists, and so much of the work you do is involved in combating the religious right that it is very much in the interests of feminists everywhere.
Well, I think that it is desperately important that dogma not be inscribed in our civil law, because watch out, and women have the most to gain by keeping government secular.
Yes, that's right. Tell us a little bit about some of the other lawsuits that you have going, because you do this really important work that just goes on quietly and consistently 24/7 all the time.
Well, just this week we are filing our first Sunlight lawsuit in state court here in Wisconsin over a violation of the Wisconsin Open Records law, and that has a feminist angle because one of the agents of Wisconsin announced right after the Hobby Lobby ruling that the contraceptive mandate in our own state law had been overturned by the Supreme Court decision on Hobby Lobby, and that was balderdash because the Religious Freedom Restoration Act explicitly does not apply to states, and that was the basis of the Supreme Court's ruling. And when one of our staff attorneys tried to get to the bottom of this pronouncement, he's been stonewalled. So we're working with a firm, a pro bono firm that specializes in open records, and we'll get to the bottom of that. We have a lawsuit that's rather heartwarming in Chino Valley, California, where the school board is praying to the point where school board meetings resemble revival meetings.
Ugh.
Go on and on and on. And we had just one set of parents, does that we weren't naming, and one teacher. And when this got into the local papers, every day we got another email from someone telling us another violation in the school district and asking if they could be part of the lawsuit. And so we're amending the complaint, and there will be 21 plaintiffs. So that shows how bad that school district is.
I'll say.
That's a change. Often people are really afraid to be part of a lawsuit. When it involves small children, we always go for a protective order so that the children do not suffer. But so that was good news that the public, there's so many more of us, so many more freethinkers, people willing to stand up for the First Amendment.
Yes.
1 in 5 Americans today.
What is it?
Religious.
What is it?
1 in 5.
1 in 5.
Yeah, they don't always call themselves an atheist, but they identify as non-religious, and that's Pew, and that's been consistent for several years.
Yes, and of course that's people who are out of the closet. That's not counting a whole bunch of folks who are, to use the word passive properly, who are sort of passive freethinker. In other words, they will not answer one way or the other, but they're not at all observant.
And what has already happened in Europe is starting to happen here. We're finally catching up with secularism, but we have there's a lot of enemies of secularism in power, so that's unfortunate.
Like the whole Supreme Court at this point. Well, with a couple of exceptions, but it's more religious than it has been in a very long while.
And it was no coincidence that it was an all-male, all-Roman Catholic majority that wrote the Hobby Lobby ruling.
Wasn't it just stunning? I mean, you'd think that they'd be ashamed because it was so obvious. It was so blatant. You'd think one of them said, hey, listen, guys, it looks bad. One of us should throw in with the other side just so it doesn't look so pro forma. Oh, my God. And the framers really would be spinning in their graves. So, all right. Well, we have to go. I urge you, listeners, to visit ffrf.org to get Annie Laurie's really remarkable book, which I consult all the time, Women Without Superstition, to listen to Free Thought Radio, which you can locate through the website. And thank you all over again for the work that you and Dan and your terrific 88-year-old mother continue to do to keep the Constitution the way that the framers intended it. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Robin, and for your wonderful feminist work. And we'll get you on our radio show, Free Thought Radio, next year.
We will definitely do that, tit for tat. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, and a joyous, happy, and merry solstice to you. And secular solstice, you betcha. Time for another quick pause here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and when we return, we'll talk with Karyn Gershon from Project Kesher, which is very, as my mother would say, good for the Jews, but it's also, being feminist, good for all other living things as well.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again. I just recently discovered this next organization that we're going to talk about. And what a thrill it was to discover it. It's not new. Project Kesher, Kesher, is 25 years old and has been doing stunning work all that time and still is and plans still more. I won't say a lot about the specifics of the work because we're going to talk about that in the interview with its executive director, Karyn Gershon. Welcome, Karyn, to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
I've been reading the 25th anniversary report of Project Kesher, and here's just a short paragraph about the Project Kesher network, listeners. Project Kesher's network operates on many levels. That's an understatement. First, it is a network of women that has developed a self-perpetuating pipeline of leaders through ongoing training, mentoring, and organizational and personal support. This local, regional, national, and international network provides a safe space for women to tackle pressing issues in the Jewish community and in the larger society. In particular, by linking women globally, Project Kesher gives Russian-speaking activists access to information and the supportive infrastructure necessary to empower them to address topics taboo in the region, such as domestic violence, trafficking, rape, and women's health issues, including reproductive health and breast cancer. That is quite an agenda, Karyn. Wow.
Well, I think the exciting thing is that it's really the agenda of the women in the region. I think there was a sense that when we first went over, that issues that were important to women in the United States could not be superimposed on the women there. But in fact, when you go and work with women around the world, you find out that their issues are our issues.
Don't
you? And so we had a lot in common and a lot to work on.
Well, you've also given the Ukraine miseries of the past year or so, you've had quite a lot of violence going on in terms of Russian-speaking women.
We really have. The most interesting thing from my perspective has been that we used to always think of the region in some ways as being somewhat monolithic because it was the former Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. But the relationships that were so long-standing and so expected to be ongoing were really put to the test between Ukraine and Russia this year, despite the fact that so many women in our network were born in one country and now live in the other. The propaganda and the violence between the countries really put everything at risk. And a lot of the work that we were working on in the region was put at risk because nobody could focus on anything but the violence.
Of course. But your network held. I mean, your network is something quite astonishing, and it's all over the world.
Yes, the network held in the most extraordinary ways from my perspective. First of all, in Ukraine, as the government was falling in Ukraine and the former administration called for attacks on the protesters in Maidan and in the regions, we found that the work that Project Kesher had been doing with the local police really discouraged the local police force from turning on the protesters in the community. So anyone who ever thinks that women's advocacy for peace is not real work, I can tell you that lives were saved because the police would not turn on the protesters because they recognized them from a lot of the community building that we were doing. And then from there, we've also found that there's been a lot of progress now in the region in terms of dialogue between the countries in Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine at a time when a lot of other organizations are finding that for political reasons, people in Ukraine no longer want to speak to people in Russia. The women in our network are not only studying substantive issues like domestic violence, best practices around the world, but also on a daily basis talking to each other to remind each other that they're all advocates for the same causes and share the same agenda.
That's amazing. Well, it's not amazing because it's the kind of thing women do. And also, the way that Project Kesher is set up, it functions on a personal support level as well. One of the things that blew me away in reading the report was women in Project Kesher's network have been very, very clear that the single most important way to empower a woman, stabilize her family, and enable her community to thrive, and let her leadership forth, I might add, is by ensuring that she is self-sufficient. So you do vocational computer training to more than 30,000 women. More than 85% of the graduates have improved their standard of living at a cost of less than $75 per person. This is extraordinary. I mean, you've won awards for this, but the changing of lives and enabling a new leadership to grow from women is the real prize.
Yes, we have found that a lot of organizations are quick to invest in children, and particularly around computer issues. But what we have found is if you invest in the mothers, particularly as many single mothers as we have in this region, what ends up happening is the whole family follows. Mm-hmm. And this project in particular, which has been done in partnership with World Ort, has been really powerful because, frankly, I think it has amazed us that we're still able to train women for less than $100 a woman to become self-sufficient.
It amazes me.
It amazes us, but it's been picked up now where Hewlett-Packard has been providing the equipment and Microsoft has been providing the software. And at this point, we basically have to invest in a space and the professor, the teacher who comes in to do the training. But it's been an incredibly effective program.
My God. Tell me, Karyn, what kind of resistance have you met? Because in the Jewish community, like all communities, there are very conservative forces. What kind of resistance have you met?
We have received, in recent years, a shocking small amount of resistance, shockingly small. Not only have we been able to work very effectively with all denominations of Judaism, we've had wonderful relationships with the Russian Orthodox Church, in particular on issues of AIDS. We went in and explained to the church at one point that the Russian government's policy was to force all HIV-positive women to abort. And they were shocked that a feminist organization would be against forcing women to abort if they were HIV positive. And we were able to explain that we were supportive of women making choices, and that when the government took away those choices, we wanted them as our ally on that. And in fact, the church was very receptive. And we've also worked with the imams in Russia as well, who have been very receptive to a progressive women's voice and actually asked the Jewish women's community to help mentor a growing Islamic women's community in Russia that wants to be more progressive. And so I would have to say that, it isn't across the board a success story because it is a very patriarchal society.
Yes.
But because the women there are so strategic, they have found issues where they can work effectively even with the most traditional religious leaders.
That's just miraculous. And within the Jewish community itself, I would imagine that there might be conservative forces that stand up and say, how can you possibly work with the imams or with the Russian Orthodox Church? Think of the pogroms, think of the past blood. How does that work? How do you respond?
Actually, we have not gotten that feedback from the Jewish community at all. We have been amazed at how supportive the Jewish community has been with us working with all faiths. And I think that they're very comfortable having women in the role of being the community builders. I don't see that in the Jewish community, halakha, tradition, ritual, is in the hands generally of men. The community building and the life in the family is traditionally the role of women. Now, we think our role is very, very broad, and we take on all kinds of issues.
Yeah, you've kind of expanded it somewhat.
Yes, but what's interesting is we went to the chief rabbis in Russia and Ukraine, both of whom are very traditional, and asked if Jewish women could be the voice of the Jewish community on non-religious issues, which means that when issues of AIDS have come up, issues of abortion, smoking, the Jewish community has been willing to defer to Jewish women on those issues.
Wow.
And as a result, We have given people in our network in the former Soviet Union access to some of the best and brightest minds in the progressive women's community in the United States and around the world. And that has gone directly into policy and into their legislative initiatives there. I mean, we certainly never want to tell them what their legislation should look like, but we work with them to see what different kind of legislative schemes are available in countries around the world. And we find that the Russian and Ukrainian governments are surprisingly receptive. When we find ourselves stymied, it's usually because we have more education to do, or because there's a lack of resources, or there's an inability to get the enforcement we need. But we find that people are often very open to the concepts that we've been introducing.
Well, you must be doing something absolutely brilliant in the way that you introduce them, because in what you just said, I got fixated on the phrase that you went in for non-religious issues like abortion. Of course, in the United States, the minute you say the A word, you have fundamentalists jumping on you from left, right, and center. Bravo! It is fantastic. The website is www.projectkesher, Project KESHER.org. And there's lots more to learn about it, listeners, that we didn't have time to go into here. But thank you, Karyn, for the work that you do at Project Kesher. And it is indeed a model for the whole global women's movement. So bravissima.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's time for one more quick break here at Women's Media Center Live, where I am still just me, Robin Morgan, but you knew that. We'll be back in just a moment with some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again in time for Fighting Words. Today, as on other solstice episodes, by listener demand, I will read my essay, The Four Secular Saints. The last year I sent Christmas cards was 1968. A plain black-bordered card mourning the Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy assassinations and the ongoing Vietnam War, urging friends to donate to movement groups instead of buying gifts. I never sent Christmas cards again, not even UNICEF cards, nor, when options became available, the veritable glut of commercialism masquerading as diversity, Hanukkah cards, Kwanzaa cards, Diwali, Ramadan, winter solstice cards. I'm happy not participating in a ritual that devours forests for paper, earns millions for Hallmark and its corporate brothers, and feeds the seasonal obligations frenzy. But I do send 4 special, messages during this season, so I can hardly pretend they're not holiday greetings. But these particular recipients deserve far more than my humble communications written on personal notepaper, manger and menorah free, unsequined by Santas, kente cloth, dreidels, or overworked non-unionized elves. This is not because these 4 people, all highly unusual Christians, send me annual messages, and their stories are the sort not reported in world media. It's because the imperative of their extraordinary lives inspires a loving, respectful response. Their names are partly changed here to protect their privacy, but all 4 are real. I met Esperanza Santos while in Brazil at a feminist conference in 1987. A tiny bird-like woman with bright blue-black skin, a sardonic smile, and a gaze ready to puncture any hypocrisy. She'd agreed to meet me in one of the favelas, the vertical slums that rise along the hills ringing Rio, because I came recommended by one of the favela women organizers, who spoke English and kindly came along to translate. Esperanza started off laughing about her own last name. "Whenever you meet someone called Santos," she said, "it's because they're born out of wedlock. In Brazil, having no father automatically makes you a saint." Esperanza Santos is one hell of an anti-religious saint. By then, almost 30 years ago, she'd already been working with prostituted Afro-Brazilian women in Rio's back streets for more than 20 years, and talking about HIV/AIDS since the early 1980s. No officials would listen. "One day they'll find me murdered," she shrugged. "It might be pimps, sex traffickers, porno guys, drug dealers, cops, Johns, government men. They all know while I'm alive I'll never quit. But I know safe places in the favelas no guys dare go. The women trust me. That's what matters, my work. Getting the girls off drugs, out of the life. Getting kids, most not even menstruating yet, out of the life, into school. It's hard enough being black and poor, but being black, poor, and a woman, that's a ticket to hell. Sex for sale is usually where poor black women start out here, and mostly where we end up. We try to survive. Some girls give me money to help others like I help them. I don't take church donations, not ever. The church is just another John, always wanting something for its money. If any God existed, its first miracle would be to destroy the church." When I offered to help raise money for her work, Esperanza shook her head fiercely. Then she smiled. "Look," she said, "nobody ever listens to what somebody like me says. Men don't listen to what women say anyway, and black women, poor, living on the street, we're just a statistic or a blowjob. Sometimes I want to scream, 'Look at me, I'm human here inside of me.' She tells me," gesturing at our translating go-between friend, "that you write books. So if anybody listens to you, you tell my story. That's what you can do." So this was her story. I've told her story all over the world, both on and off the page. I fear the December when I might not hear back from her, but we touch base, so far, every year. Mary Amiri lives in the Gaza Strip, where I met her during my first journey into the region in the early 1980s. She's a self-acknowledged feminist, a peace activist, an educator, and an expert in child development, and a Christian Palestinian. This great combo means she gets targeted by all sides. She works trying to detoxify Palestinian children in Gaza's refugee camps from what's become, after a half-century of violence, more than a half-century, a culture saturated by it, addicted to it. She grieves at the rhinocerisation of these children, who parrot their fathers, boys chanting their lust to become martyrs, girls sing-songing their desire to become the mothers of martyrs. Gently, repeatedly, stubbornly, Mary reminds them that they once dreamed of becoming teachers, doctors, artists. She feels rewarded by even their faintest glimmers of recognition. A survivor of breast cancer and double mastectomy, Mary regularly endures a devastating harassment at border crossings with Israel. Since she frequently travels abroad to and from scholarly conferences, the Israeli airport security terms know her very well, an academic in her 70s, short, gray-haired, affable. But every time they insist that she strip naked from the waist up so they can hand-search her breast prostheses while she stands and waits. The younger guards like to put the rubber prostheses up against their own chests and prance around giggling. If she surrendered her work and her travel, the guards say openly, they wouldn't be forced to commit this humiliation. She replies softly, the humiliation is theirs. Each December, Mary sends me a Christmas card, and I write to her. Nothing much changes. Her news about Hamas's rule in Gaza is awful. Her health is worse, but her passion for children she tries to save from all sides in the ongoing agony of Palestine-Israel, her passion endures. Sister Serena is decidedly Christian. A Sisters of Charity nun, she's an openly lesbian feminist activist in perpetual hot water with her superiors. I've known her since I was 17, but that's another story. She spent 3 decades in Latin America, a real liberation theology practitioner who never omitted women from the freedom equation. She was imprisoned and tortured in El Salvador, and again later in Guatemala, where her lover, another nun, was murdered. Now in her 80s, living out of the habit, as she wryly puts it, in a small New England women's collective, she quietly does abortion referrals to pregnancy termination clinics, not adoption agencies, and she retains a crisp sense of humor. When I wrote her about having been moved at a concert of Gregorian chant by all-female voices, she replied, "Yes, I used to love that in my youth when I was mistress of novices, watching the late afternoon light prisms through the convent chapel windows, hearing those pure, high voices. Profound. Better be profound, in fact, or else I sure have tossed my life away." The fourth is a woman I've met only once. Her face is hard and lined. She's poor, not young, not educated. She works as a doorkeeper at an old house in a side street in Catania in Sicily. I was there in the mid-1990s during an Italian book tour with Maria Nadotti, real name, friend and journalist who's also my Italian editor and translator and interpreter. On our last day, as Maria and I rushed to the airport, this woman recognized us from a TV interview we had done on violence against women. In Sicily, yet. She called out. Maria translated rapidly. "Is it really true?" the woman asked, clutching Maria with one hand and me with the other, "what you said on the television, that women in many places are fighting back against the violence, against being beaten?" "Yes," we said, sophisticated writers trying hard to swallow the emotion that rose in our throats. "Yes, it's true. Women are fighting back, many, many places, far beyond Sicily, all over the world. And one day they will make it stop. The pain, we will make this happen?" Her eyes shone. "Yes," we cried, openly now, clinging to each other and her. "One day, women everywhere, trying. Yes." She nodded, blessing us with a radiant, gap-toothed smile. "That is very good," she sighed. Then she added with great dignity, "because I would fight anyway, but now I am not all alone in my fight." The following year I dedicated the Italian edition of The Demon Lover, The Roots of Terrorism to this woman, whose name I had learned was Adriana Russo, and I've told her story, too, in many countries since that day. Hearing it, women spontaneously cry out, in answer to a Sicilian woman they'll never meet, "You are not alone." Yet wherever she stands, she herself recreates all possibility. She is indeed the doorkeeper who opens the portal and shows the way. Her card, replete with angels and magi, you bet, arrives every December, and so does my greeting go back in fractured Italian. These are the people to whom I send my 4 Christmas cards. None of us is young, and each year I worry one of us will fail to make contact. That day will come, of course, but for now, these women embody to me the spirit of miracle celebrated not through myth, but solidly in the scientific calendar of our planet, the solstice. A dear friend of mine was born on the summer solstice, another friend on the winter solstice, the same day, depending on whether one is in the northern or southern hemisphere. Our seasonal realities shimmer between such instantaneous, singular duality. But wherever we are, the winter solstice celebrates the returning of the light, as the days grow longer and night shrinks back. And who could be better avatars of light than these 4 old women, my secular saints? And that's it for today. We're going on hiatus for a couple of weeks, but we'll be back after the holidays with new episodes, some truly major guests, and some delicious surprises. In the meantime, you can catch up on episodes you might have missed at WMCLive.com, where you can find the archive of every one of our previous shows. Also, you can always find WMC Live on Facebook, Twitter, and at iTunes worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton. Senior Producer, Crystal Williams-Chancellor. And our founding sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Have a joyful solstice. Thank you for being with us. Happy New Year, and join us January 10th here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.